r/AskReddit. What deep, dark secret did you learn about the seemingly perfect family? Know a brother and sister. Live together in a huge mansion and both own amazing beautiful cars. Clearly very affluent. One of them began dating a family friend who wasn't so well off. Turns out the reason they're so rich is because their parents were associated with some Italian mafia and were brutally murdered and aped in front of them when they were children. They were given a huge inheritance after this event. You would never guess. They look like they've had the easiest life. Edit, since everyone's asking. The mother was aped, then murdered while her husband watched. Then the husband was murdered. Poor choice of syntax. My bad. Well, it is better to cry in a brand new Mercedes than on a hitty old bike. At least you got a bike. I can't cry anymore because tears are precious hydration I can't afford to replace. I worked at an Amazon store. The owner of the place hired this kid whose parents went to his church. The day he was supposed to start, the whole family shows up. Mom, dad, son. They all start working. The guy was too spineless to let them go, so they all got hired. They were pretty much bottom of the barrel workers and just kind of kept themselves aside from pleasantries. We were kind of a rowdy bunch and they didn't fit in. And also 3 of them did the work of 1 person. My coworker started referring to them as a Dahmer family because the father resembled Jeffrey Dahmer and they were all a little bit too idyllic and Christian. Then it started to get weird. The son regularly called out, citing stomach issues and saying certain tasks made his legs tired and things like that. Mr. Dahmer started having these intense fits of rage where he would go off on us for minor things. Ms. Dahmer started to become strangely attached to me and regularly bought me strange gifts like holistic headache creams, a neti pot, organic tea, etc. Years later I find out that the son had AIDS. The mother and the son were a little too close for that age. The father eventually got caught doing some strange things and they got a divorce. Miss Dahmer, on my last week working there, started asking me about demons and things. On my last day she gave me this manila envelope that had this 30-page manifesto she written as a letter to me about how she was infested with demons and all kinds of crazy Song of Solomon type things. She thought I was infested with demons too. But hey, I still have that neti pot. So it was a neti positive? Edit, changed from net positive due to 1,000 replies telling me so. No. He went into medical bankruptcy after he got parasites from using the neti pot with tap water. It was a neti loss. They kept their handicapped son locked up. Most people didn't even know he existed. They made his room like a padded cell and just left him in bed all the time with a nurse coming to bathe, feed and rotate him. His parents didn't even talk to him or look at him often. People dealt with things badly in the past. I had a close friend at school whose brother had Downs, but we didn't know because he was sent to a home early in life and never saw him. It all came out one day when one of us dropped by at the time of his annual home visit. She had been forbidden to mention her brother even in front of her parents. Bruh, that's not dealing badly, that's straight up abuse. My grandpa on my mom's side had another family on the side. When he died my grandmother's name was put on his gravestone. The other family chiseled it out. Also my oldest aunt on my mom's side isn't blood related. Didn't learn that until I was 23. How is it determined who is the main family and who is the side family? Does it just boil down to who was there first? Does it matter if one family knows about the other but not the reverse? I have so many questions. Of course our side of the family says we were the main family, but that's because he was married to my grandma first. Not sure how the other family found out. My grandma found out after rumors started spreading, and she confronted him. The other family was from another town. This was in the 60s and grandma was an immigrant housewife. So she didn't have too many options but stay with him, so it's not spoke too much of. Grandpa died when my grandma was pregnant with my mom. Throwaway time. My grandmother is directly related to Kim Il-sung. She performed as a kindergartner in front of him. Her family ran away to South Korea when the war began, and she grew up relatively poor. You are now admin of r/Pangayang. My parents were in a cult for years that worshipped chaos magic. When I was in the hospital recovering from pneumonia, I hallucinated for 2 weeks. I don't remember the first few days of it, but a friend swears that he came to visit me and I was babbling on about different kinds of magic, and one of them was chaos magic. An ex-fiance also told me that not only do I snore in my sleep, but I do this spooking mumbling thing where it sounds like I'm trying to cast spells. I'm kind of annoyed that I can't fully access my magical powers. Go to the forest and kill some boars till you level up. You should get access to some good magic around level 15 or so. My father was a pastor who cheated on his wife, my mother, while she was undergoing chemotherapy. So there's that. Edit. Just to be clear, he was very manipulative and abusive behind closed doors, so that's why we were a seemingly perfect family. We don't have any relationship with him anymore, and we intend to keep it that way. Pretty sure he's homeless now, and I heavily disagree with you if you think there's any justification for abandoning the person who needs you the most when they're at their weakest and lowest point. Kindly duck off if you wanna convince me what he did wasn't that bad. Because you weren't there. And please don't recommend any Eminem song to me. I'm never gonna listen to it. Your dad is Newt Gingrich? Newt Gingrich sounds like the final evolution of Gary Jurgic after his name gets butchered beyond recognition. I grew up with a girl down the street who lived with her mom and stepdad. Stepdad was pretty cool, according to 7-year-old me. Nice guy. Come to find out, he'd been raping my friend for years. It had been going on so long, had been so normalized to her, that she thought I was doing that with my dad. And our other friend was doing it with her dad. To her, your father figure having sex with you was just something you did. I was too young to know what happened at the time it was discovered. But I do remember my mom asking me if he had ever touched me, and her being very concerned he might have hurt me. Was years before I found out what actually happened. The worst ones are always the nice. If they acted mean in public, people would suspect something. I have yet to prove that the family next door is in witness protection or a spy family. On to you, John. I moved to a new state 10 years ago, and right away I was able to work from home. Because of that I thought it would be great to buy a Porsche convertible as my daily driver, because every drive was for fun, no commuting and all that nonsense. Everyone in my neighborhood thought I was under witness protection. I showed them my work setup with all the monitors and fast internet, but they thought it was for gaming because of the fancy rig I used to run it all. To this day, even though now I work a normal job, they are convinced that I'm in some way under witness protection. What job do you work that you got a Porsche and work from home? That they were actually perfect. Honestly, I've learned a lot of deep, dark secrets about a lot of families. What freaked me out the most was learning that an actual Leave It to Beaver type family could exist. Took me years to learn how to deal with it. Check the grandfather clock. There's a secret entrance to a rape dungeon in that house somewhere. A rape dungeon full of consenting adults. They continue to be the perfect family. She was sleeping with his brother. At 60 she divorced him and married the brother. The most shocking part is that all three eventually ended up back on friendly terms and were invited to the next 3 weddings of the husband, though wife and brother did not live to see the 4th. On the next Arrested Development, Gob tries his El Pacino incent of a woman impersonation. Hoo-wah. 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 When I was a kid I knew a set of twins who were friends with my older sister. The twins, both female, were straight A students and always dressed modestly. Neither girl was allowed to date, and their parents owned a huge house with multiple cars and the girls never seemed to want for anything. Anyway, a few years later the parents were busted because apparently they owned another house a few streets away, less lavish, and they were running a brothel out of it with girls the same age as their daughters, who were around 18 at this time and both in university. I just found it very ironic that they were so protective over their own daughters, but were whoring out other people's daughters. I just found it very ironic that they were so protective over their own daughters, but whoring out other people's daughters. They know that there's a lot of sleazy people out there that might exploit them. People like them. For instance, you have no idea how much I like it when people type an accent / abnormal speech. It makes it so much more human to read. On my mother's side I have an aunt who decided to steal money from a charity to rebuild a guy's house that recently burned down. It was a small town, so all they had was a bin for dollar bills at the local bar. She took all of it and the next day had some expensive new shoes. And on my dad's side my grandfather was some weasel-faced con man who cheated at church, celebrities, and politicians so he could live without working. But one day he and one of the largest sport memorabilia collections on earth disappeared. He apparently was killed in a mob hit. On my mother's side I have an aunt who decided to steal money from a charity to rebuild a guy's house that recently burned down. I read this as she stole from one charity in order to help out a different cause and thought, well, that's not so bad. Whoops. They're deep in debt. Nobody must know. Well, aren't we all? I have a cousin out there that my whole family has never met. My grandparents were the nicest people, but apparently my aunt got pregnant as a teen and they sent her away to have the baby and give up for adoption. I believe this would have been sometime in the 60s or even late 50s given her age. One of my parents told me this a while ago once, and I've never heard anyone in my whole family ever mention anything about it other than that one time. Surprisingly common thing at that time. There was a lot of pressure to maintain an image of being a good girl from a good family. So children born out of wedlock were hushed about and put up for adoption. A little over a decade ago, we were told that my aunt gave a child up for adoption in the late 60s when she got pregnant in her late teens. Our family was Catholic, so she just went away for school for a bit and came back. My grandparents were the only other people who knew, and they kept that secret. When we were told about it, it was to explain the new cousin that came to our family reunion that year. Everybody just shrugged and said okay. There are now 13 of us first cousins instead of 12. It wasn't a big deal and the new cousin is accepted and integrated as family, like she was always there. My best friend's mom also got pregnant in her late teens in a Catholic family and went through the same process of adoption in the late 60s. She later married a man and had 3 children. The oldest child is my best friend. She always regretted being pressured to put her baby up for adoption and tried to search for her as she got older, including contacting the adoption agency to allow her adopted daughter to contact her if she was interested. She died of cancer several years ago, carrying the regret and sadness over never meeting her daughter that she put up for adoption. My best friend and her siblings would still love to meet the sister their mother searched for. So if you are Elisa Mary born in Berkeley in the late 60s and adopted, they'd like to meet you. Now I'm sad. Have an upvote. Family whose parents were popular and well liked in the area back when they were in high school. Their daughters were all popular and well liked as well in high school. They were all the type of people that had no strong opinions and did not care to argue. Just kinda positive people. People automatically were kind of drawn to them, and for that everyone in town likes them. They have some ownership in a local dealership too, and their girls are on a lot of the commercials. One day, one of their daughters, same grade as me back in high school, let it slip to me that she found a hidden camera in the pool changing room at their pool house. She said it in kind of a row yeah. Haha shrug, found a camera. My dad is so silly. It kind of seems like she was assuming he put it there to catch them drinking. But she realizes that it was probably more than that, but she just figures boys will be boys type thing. The dad looks like the creepiest mother ducker ever, and he has been likely videotaping not only his daughters, but all of their female friends, which is like nearly all of the popular high school women in my town. You now have a moral and ethical duty to report this to a higher up of some sort. You don't have to tell the police, but just a teacher, a principal, anyone who can take it off your hands and handle it. You don't know what else he's doing. As someone who works with teenagers on a regular basis, this person 100% has a duty to report this. I know in my state I have the legal requirement to report it if a student comes to me with something like this. If I don't report it, I can go to jail. You need to tell someone. That's ducked up. There could be other stuff this dad is doing that will never be found out if you don't say something. Please. For the sake of the girls and any other females that are around him, report him. He's a predator who won't stop on his own. Edit. Apparently, having to report is specific to the career you are in. I thought it was that way for everyone, but apparently it's mainly for people who directly interacts with kids. I was wrong. Sorry about that. Just get passionate and want to make sure kids don't get taken advantage of. I have a very small family of about 7 people. Growing up, everyone would get together for events and everything seemed pretty normal and everyone seemed to get along. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I noticed that everyone in my family actually hates the hit out of each other, and it was just some huge contest to see who had become the better person over the years. My mother and my grandmother are the only ones who talk to each other, and it's probably only because they live together. My grandmother and grandfather are separated, and my grandmother only calls him every few months to see if he's dead or not. Ring. Hello. Matt, still alive. Click. Ducking like and subscribe.